Republicans love to talk culture war issues during the campaign season, and the attacks on Planned Parenthood for the last year have given them plenty of exposure. But this is one time when everything blew up in their face. Earlier today, Farron Cousins talked with Howard Nations about this story. So let's take a look.
Howard, the whole Planned Parenthood attacks, God, we've been hearing about it for almost a year now. Republicans have been going after it. And I think one thing that's really been missed in all the shuffle is what exactly Planned Parenthood is. How long have they been around? What is their importance? And I think that's something that people really need to understand before we even get into the craziness of what has happened in the last 2 weeks with them. So take us back, kind of to the beginning. What exactly is Planned Parenthood's role in the United States?
That's a great question in the context of all the misinformation that's out there today. Planned Parenthood is the nation's largest women's health care provider. They provide critical and preventative health care primarily to low and moderate income women. Federal dollars that they get are paid for STD screenings, for contraception, and for cancer screenings and things of that nature. Public health experts agree that Planned Parenthood helps preserve women's overall health and fertility while limiting unwanted pregnancies. By limiting unwanted pregnancies, they also do great things to reduce the number of abortions.
Well, I think it's very interesting because those are things that very rarely have they been discussed. And so I guess part of the issue as well is, this organization does receive funding from the government, and that's what got the conservatives all riled up about it, because according to the Republicans, the federal government is paying Planned Parenthood to go out there and just perform as many abortions as possible. Let's, one right after the other, knock them out. And that's what they say. It's this massive abortion, multiplex funded by the government. Is there any truth at all to anything in that statement?
Well, the Republican politicians who are saying that know better. They're either stupid or they're just lying, or both. The fact is that the government had a major problem. The cost to the government of treating and delivering the babies of unintended pregnancies, they did a study in 2006, the cost was $11 billion in 1 year. Part of the solution was to publicly fund family planning organizations such as Planned Parenthood. It saves the state and federal government $4.3 billion each year. The contraceptive use alone saves $19 billion in direct medical costs and reduces the occurrence of abortions. They do more to prevent abortions, far more to prevent abortions, than they ever do in performing abortions.
And none of the federal funding that the group receives is even allowed to go towards any kind of abortion services, correct?
Yeah, that's right. They actually, in fiscal 2014, which is the last year that we have funding information on them, they received $528 million in government funding, $305 million in non-government funding, and $257 million of that was from private donors and foundations. They received $57 million for fee from their services. The federal funding for abortions was absolutely zero. In 1976, it was made illegal to use federal funds for abortions. The abortions are only 3% of all the services that are provided by Planned Parenthood, but the Republican politicians are trying to defund the entire thing and all the other benefits that come to women from Planned Parenthood.
Because, when you look at the Republican base, really, because the politicians are the ones saying it, but the Republican base are the ones that eat this up, because their whole crusade has always been, let's limit a woman's right to choose what to do with her body. That's the cut and dry of it. That's exactly what they want to do. So the Republican politicians, they buy into this. And so they come out on the floor of the House. We've seen them come out during the debates and attack Planned Parenthood. So why all of the I know they do it for the base, but anybody who has access to internet and a search engine can find out the truth in 10 seconds about this group. So how do these attacks continue to be successful?
Well, Republican politicians are never bothered by facts. What happened here recently to make this thing fired up so much is in 2015, the so-called Center for Medical Progress, their president, David Daleiden, and Sandra Merritt, who was the founder of a fake tissue procurement company called Biomax, produced a group of sting videos that purported to show that Planned Parenthood was illegally trafficking in fetal tissue. Republican politicians' heads exploded. They were so happy when they saw this video. State and federal investigations began. Outrage ensued across the board. This verified all those things that they had always dreamed might be true. Republican politicians called for defunding of Planned Parenthood, and they called for grand juries and legislative investigations of Planned Parenthood's illegal activities. So far, 12 states have investigated Planned Parenthood. No evidence out of 12 state investigations that Planned Parenthood was selling or profiting off fetal tissues. The actual use, now think about this, the actual use of the fetal tissue is for medical research. They're seeking cures for healthcare issues such as Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, miscarriage, and other women's health issues particularly. The fetal tissue use is agreed to by the mothers. The fetal tissue research is supported by federal funds, $76 million last year. Now, the congressional investigations, the federal investigation, in addition to the 12 state investigations, the Republicans in the House, 4 separate investigations by Congress, no wrongdoing, no evidence of wrongdoing by Planned Parenthood. The Senator Ernst, the prominent pig castrator from Iowa, she called for an investigation by Health and Human Services. They did so. No violations of tissue laws. No violations found by the Obama administration. So finally, after all these investigations, criminal conduct was found. Among Republican politicians calling for the investigation of Planned Parenthood was Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick is a very hardcore right-wing hero of the far right wing in Texas. Dan referred this to the Harris County District Attorney for an absolute full investigation, taking it wherever it'll go. Now, he felt pretty complacent about this since the district attorney had been appointed by Rick Perry. And she took it where it went. She took it to the grand jury who indicted David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt of Biomax and of the Center for Medical Progress for having altered videos that had begun this whole debacle. Now, specifically, they were indicted for second-degree felony of tampering with a government record and purchase of and sale of human organs, which is a Class A misdemeanor. Now, the second-degree felony carries up to 20 years in prison.
You know, Carly Fiorina, during one of the first Republican debates, she told the crowd that she had seen these videos.
Oh, yeah.
She saw the fetus on the table. It was, flailing its legs and waving its arms, and then they kill it. Even in the doctored videos, that didn't even exist anywhere. I mean, that she just made that up on the spot. But those are just the kinds of crazy, crazy talking points that Republicans are using with Planned Parenthood. And so now we're finally going to get an indictment of the people who made the films. And just in the little bit of time we have left, do you believe that will kind of stop the attacks? Or, as you've said, Republicans don't care about facts, so do you think it's just going to continue to barrel forward?
Well, they've also sued the Center for Medical Progress in California on RICO. And in addition to that, they're taking other actions to try to bring the facts of this to the public. They did a forensic analysis. They found that the tapes were intentionally deceptive. They had manipulated footage. They contained 42 instances of editing and taken out of context, and the transcripts that they released, upon which these Republicans are basing their move to defund Planned Parenthood, the transcripts did not match what was actually said on the tapes. That did not prevent Congress from passing legislation to defund Planned Parenthood, which was fortunately vetoed by President Obama. Let me mention one last thing. I know we're out of time, but there's one last thing. Instead of calling this pro-life, they should be calling it pro-birth, because they're not in favor of life, because they immediately abandon the mother and child. They attack the same people that cry out on behalf of the fetuses, immediately attack the social safety net, the food stamp program, the minimum wage. If they cared nearly as much for the actual children after they're born as they claim for the fetuses before they're born, their position would be a little more palatable.
Absolutely. Howard Nations, thank you for telling us this story. It's a very important story, and I hope everyone takes the time to fully understand exactly what is happening, exactly what this group is, and who David Daleiden and his group are. This has been a disgusting story, and unfortunately I still don't think Republicans are going to give up on it, but thank you for talking with us today, Howard.
My pleasure.